This is Get Unstuck Podcast, a podcast for entrepreneurs who prioritize their life first, business second. I'm Mutita Panmuk, your host, who dedicates my life to designing and building a business that supports lifestyle. We will learn together from entrepreneurs around the world how they overcome their life challenges, their business obstacles, and yet still get unstuck from the hamster wheel of burying themselves into their business. Because time is the number one commodity in the world that you cannot get back once it's gone. So let's shorten the learning curve and see how can we prioritize better. Let's get unstuck. Hi, Get Unstuck Nation. So our guest today, Jody Grunden, who is partner and Virtual CFO practice leader of Submit Virtual CFO, which is the leading provider of virtual CFO services in the North America. So he's also an author of Digital Dollars and Cents and building the virtual CFO firm in the cloud. So today we are going to talk about how to build and grow your businesses in the years, and also how to have the ideas of disruption from the normal, how other people do and think differently, and also how to have a visions in these 20 years of experiences of how to help clients maximize profit, minimize taxes, and also increase cash flow. So please welcome Jody to Get Unstuck podcast today. Yay!
Hey.
Hi, Jody.
Hi, Multita. How are you doing today?
I'm very good. How are you?
Not bad, not bad.
So, Jody, 20 years you have been doing this business. It's been a long time, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, 20 years ago. When I started out, we it was one of those things that I kind of felt orphaned. And what I mean by that is I worked in a public accounting firm for about 3 years, two different ones, and realized pretty quickly that I didn't like public accounting. And the reason I didn't like what I did like about it was I was, worked on many different clients at one time. It was fun kind of going from one client to the next. But what happened was that the hours were just way too many. I wanted to raise a family. I really didn't see a career path there for me. And so I thought you always think the grass is greener. So I jumped to the corporate world and worked for a $250 million manufacturing company and thought this has got to be the way, because again, I wasn't working the bazillion hours I was working in public accounting, but pretty quickly I mastered what my role was, and it became super boring, and so I realized that pretty quickly that I didn't like either. I didn't like the corporate world and I didn't like the public accounting world, and so I had to figure out what to do with myself, and that's when the entrepreneurial spirit came out, and I thought, hey, let's kind of create a company that does the best of both worlds. And so about 20 years ago, that's when we started Summit with that concept.
But why you choose accounting, by the way?
Accounting, well, that's basically the degree I went into college for. So I went into college thinking, hey, accounting is something that if it doesn't work out, I always thought this, if it doesn't work out, it's a skill that I can apply to other types of business. So if I want to be a owner in a business or an entrepreneur or whatever that might be, accounting would give me that skill that would enable me to work in different areas. And so that's why I picked accounting. It was either between accounting or finance. I wanted one of the two of those.
So definitely I have no background in this area, but how different actually for a person to decide like between accounting and finance?
Yeah, so with finance, if I were going to go into finance, my end goal would be more stock trading. So I'd be going and trading stocks and bonds and working with individuals, mostly individuals, and helping them invest their money, that sort of thing. Whereas with accounting, it gave me the opportunity to, it was more so on the tax side that I saw accounting. So it was helping and understanding the tax laws of especially of the United States, and helping clients with that manner. So it was more, do I want to go the tax side with accounting and then small businesses and working with them and teaching them how to be profitable, or do I want to go on the finance side, and that was more the individual and helping them grow their money, helping their money make money.
That's why. Because I have been thinking that there are two at least occupation, like after you certify, that you can work for the lifetime. Is one is the
Mhm.
lawyer, another is CPA, right? That you can
Yep,
sign for the whole until you die.
that's exactly right. Yep. I hope I'm not working that long.
Yeah, I agree as well. But yeah, at least. So, and how you started this business then?
Yeah. So when we started it, I started it with the idea that I wanted to do things differently, and I didn't want to be a traditional accounting firm. And so I thought, that with the entrepreneur part of me, kind of took over. And it's like, well, how can we do things differently? And immediately I went back and I did the things that I knew how to do. And that was, preparing tax returns, meeting with clients and kind of going over historical information. And that's how I got started. So I got started as a traditional model, and that was about 20 years ago. And within 2 years, I realized, hey, this isn't working out. So the first thing we did is I had to figure out how to productize the service, because what happened was in public accounting, and still is pretty dominantly today, is that people work by the hour and charge by the hour. And so I didn't like that concept. And I thought, hey, can we get rid of that concept, and how can we do it? And so I thought, well, if we productize the service, that's the first step on getting rid of the billable hour, so that we won't have to, I won't have to send an invoice out to a client and that sort of thing. And so that's what I did. And so the idea was, hey, let's meet with clients on a regular basis, and let's provide them some insight on what they did. Clients loved it. They would come to the meetings, and I felt that if I'm meeting with them on a regular basis at the end of the year, when it comes time to do their tax returns, then it would be very simple for me to do. So the tax side of me, was like, yeah, this would make my life a lot easier, January through April, which is the U.S. tax season there. And it would spread out the time that I was working on clients evenly throughout the year, versus having it highly concentrated into a tax season that is pretty traditional with accounting firms. And so started off by productizing, and thought, hey, historical stuff, that was great. Clients would come, they would get a good understanding. And then I started offering and putting a twist onto it, and offering cash flow forecasting. And with cash flow forecasting, now we're talking about what the client's cash position was going to look like, from day one over the next 13 weeks, and really broke it down for the client. And it's pretty amazing, because as a CPA or as an accountant, I kind of took that as for granted that all business owners did that. That's what we did in the multi-million dollar manufacturing company. I was responsible for cash flow. I had to, look at the cash flow on a regular basis, and see how long, cash would last, and all that, when timing of receivables and payables would come in. And I just assumed that all business owners would do that. And I was wrong. They were really good at their craft, but not great on the financial side. And so that little thing really helped me and sparked the idea that, hey, I can productize this, not only looking backward, but going forward. And so clients started asking questions like, hey, can you do more for us? And it's like, well, yeah, I can. And so then the next thing I did is, instead of just the 13-week cash flow, I looked at what we call a year, 2 years, and 3-year forecast. And so we're dialing into the client, and really kind of teaching them what, where they're going to be over the next year, 2 years, and 3 years. But the key is that I realized pretty quickly that clients don't understand numbers. And what I mean by that is, I can't just magically say, hey, yeah, if we increase sales by 10% next year, that's automatically going to happen. And because it doesn't. And so I had to break it down into non-financial indicators or non-financial numbers, so that clients could understand it. With a service-based industry, it's the number of people, their utilization rates, their average bill rates. Those are some of the kind of the KPIs. With a trucking company, like a truck repair company, it might be the number of trucks coming into the repair shop, the dollar amount of the repairs that are being made, and it could be the inventory of trucks that they have in order, that they have on site to actually be completed over the next month or so. And so then when I talk to the client, I'm talking trucks, not necessarily numbers. And so it's like, hey, you missed your number by X amount of dollars. What happened? Did you not have as many trucks come through? And they're like, yeah, we missed it, but we only had 4 trucks. We thought we were going to get 6. And then the conversation goes, well, is that going to happen next month too? Are you expecting 6 or 4? Should we increase or decrease it? And then basically show them, hey, here's your cash position in 6 months, and here's what it looks like based on the fact we only had 4 come in versus the 6 that we thought. and we can kind of tweak the changes, and they can really see exactly what they're doing now and how that impacts going forward. And it's kind of funny because when we start engagements out now, that's one of the first questions we ask. Where do you want to be in 3 years? What do you want to do in a year? What's the purpose of your business? And they'll say, I want to retire, or they want to sell, or whatever that might be. And then as the CFO for that client, then we can say, okay, well, let's go ahead and create the forecast to show you how what it's going to be like in 2 years when you sell. And they say, I want to get so much money for the company. Well, in order to get that amount of money for the company, here's what you have to do from now until then in order to achieve that. And so then it just kind of puts again the goal out there, so that the client can understand exactly what they need to achieve in order to get to where they want to be, and so there's no surprises along the way. And we did that with clients from there on. That, and then clients just asked for more and more and more, and so we started offering back end office, back end accounting stuff. Like, we offered to help pay their bills and do their receivables and their payroll and some of the accounting functions that typically goes along with it. We started offering that for a few clients, and that's about a third of what we do today is the accounting function. 90% is the CFO, but it was kind of a reverse from what today. We started with the advisory side and then eventually added on to it, and it's grown tremendously from the time we started with no money back 20 years ago to growing it to a $10 million firm in 2022, and then eventually selling it to a large CPA firm, and now being part of a division of that CPA firm with the idea that, hey, we're going to grow at 5x of revenue over the next 5 years. And so it's been a pretty great journey. So again, it's a long answer to your question, but that's how that started.
Wow. What are the data that you have to have initially in hand to be able to forecast, to match your exit or your end goal?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, what kind of data do we have to have? And so it really depends on the client. So let's say that you became a client of ours, and let's say that you had a salon. The data that we would need to have is, where you're at today. What's your accounting look like right now? So we need to have a starting point, and that starting point's really important. So good financial records, super important to have today. And then just in talking with you, what are your goals that you want to achieve going forward? Do you want to accumulate cash? Do you want to sell? Whatever those end goals might be, and that's really all we need to know. And then from there, we just need to know what are your drivers of revenue. So if it's a hair salon, how many haircuts are you going to be doing? What's the frequency of companies coming in? Are you selling other products? What all the different revenue drivers. It's important for the CFO to understand and know that, and then be able to forecast that out. What do we typically spend in a week, a day, a month, and whatever that might be? How many haircuts are coming through a day in the month? How many different beauticians or barbers do you have on staff? Are you going to be adding more? All the different things that drive revenue in order to basically to create a revenue forecast. And then we need to know the direct costs that are associated with it. So if we're going to hire a barber, well, then how much are we paying that barber or beautician for that service? So are they on commission? Do we pay them a booth rental fee? How do you make money? And so, those are the two main drivers up there, is the revenue driver and then the direct costs associated with it. From there on out, it's just simply the administrative, marketing, and facility costs. And those are fairly general and fairly fixed expenses that don't change a ton from year to year, or shouldn't change a ton from year to year. And then ultimately, the big question then is, how much money do you want to make? Because you might build this model, and this model might be designed to only make a small dollar amount. And then it isn't worth all the effort in the model to achieve this dollar amount, or is the end goal to sell it in 3 years or 2 years and make your a ton of money at that point? Or is it that the goal is to make a lot of money now, knowing that maybe down the road you might not make as much, or maybe you'll make more based on how the trends are going with mergers and acquisitions. So it's just kind of diving into the client, figuring out how their business operates, what are the revenue drivers, what are the direct expenses associated with it, and then from there on, just kind of building that forecast based on real life activity. What could potentially happen. And so once that forecast is built in design, you just can't just let it go. You can't leave it there and say, "Yep, we've done our job. Now, good luck." It's a constant revisit every single month and see, hey, are you hitting your numbers? Do we need to change anything going forward? Or do we need to increase things going up or back? Are you going to get there quicker now because you're doing so well? We thought it's going to take you 3 years. Now it's 2.5 years based on your progression, or maybe it's longer because maybe you got a slower ramp up or whatever. But it's important to have those monthly check-ins to see how we're doing and then make adjustments to it, to the modeling part.
So if you have those data, you can do that yourself, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Everybody on this call can do it themselves. They don't need a virtual CFO to do it. The thing is that often they need that person to affirm that what they're doing is accurate. Because what happens is if we start making bad assumptions, it could lead us into the wrong direction. So that's where it comes to having somebody like a consultant or advisor or CFO helping whether that person's internally in their business or externally, really makes no difference. But they need that person to be able to help them and kind of guide them along the way. Because as a business owner, we're all lonely out there. We can't tell our second command when the good and the bad. We tend to hold it into ourselves. And what that advisor does, it allows you to share that information and be able to make better decisions because of it.
Yeah, especially when we are too close to the problem, we don't see the solution.
That's
And
exactly.
yeah, and I like it when you say that you have to explain in the language that actually your clients understand. That is something that is hard though, because when I see all the numbers like financial year report or something, I'm like, I know how to read it, but can you translate it for me?
Right, exactly. It's a foreign language for a lot of
Language.
Yeah, it really is. It's completely a foreign language for a majority of business owners.
Yeah. So yeah, I understand. Like we show the data and also translate that is so important for interpretation. Yeah, I get
Mhm.
that. I get that.
Yep.
Yeah. So and how come? See, like Virtual CFO, like, and you have opened this firm for like 20 years, but you told me that you start to do virtually 10 years ago. Like
Yep. Mhm.
how this idea happened.
That's a great question. So we for the first probably 10 years of it, we actually went to the client came to us. And so it was a very in-person relationship. And I realized pretty quickly that was not scalable. Although it was great and you get out of the office and you meet people and all that kind of stuff, wasn't scalable. And I was trying to make something bigger than myself. And so we thought, well, hey, how can we make it scalable? And so we started marketing nationally at that time. And so, as opposed to just finding clients that were local. And so we found a client in Rhode Island, which for that point it was, 10 states away, and there was no way that we would be able to actually go to their location. So we thought, hey, this is a perfect opportunity to figure it out. And so we, they asked if we needed to be there, and I said, no, absolutely not. We can do everything remotely, and we started doing it over the phone. And so a lot of it was phone conversations initially. The internet wasn't great back then, so video conferencing is very tough, very choppy. And so the phone worked out really well. We met with them on a regular basis over the phone. And talking about how to be creative is talking numbers over the phone, super tough. And with that, had to send information in advance, and it was a big thing, but we figured it out. And then we realized, wow, this could be great if we could actually do the video conferencing. And so it was about a year later, we started moving our meetings from the phone to video conferencing. And it changed pretty significantly. It was like, wow, this is super, super easy now, because now we could share screens. Again, the video wasn't great at that time, but it was better. And we could share screens and we can kind of walk through things with the client, and it was really easy to do. And so we started offering the CFO service virtually versus in person. And so it wasn't probably until about 2013 in that ballpark that we thought, why are we actually working together in an office? Because we had 18 people on the team at that time, and we're like, well, why can't we just simply work completely virtual? And so we did. So we got rid of the office about 10 years ago, and the team figured out how to work remotely. And the nice thing about it was we had a client that was one of the very first fully distributed basically fully distributed companies, meaning that they didn't have an office at all. There were about 60 people on the team, and we learned from them. We learned, hey, this is what they're doing to have a very high culture. Their culture was awesome. They were able to be highly profitable. We learned how to quote clients, when you don't have to be in person. We learned a lot from them, and we thought, well, let's bring that over to a CPA firm and do that. We were the first financial firm to go remotely, about 10 or so years ago, and really haven't looked back. We thought, hey, let's hire people all across the United States. Then it became, let's hire people internationally. And so we hired folks in India and the Philippines and Mexico and Canada. And we just started branching out, looking for the best talent that could do the job. And it worked out in our favor big time. We, as we went through the pandemic, we really didn't have any issues there outside of people now. Instead of having their kids at daycare, they're walking behind them on the screen. That sort of thing is really the only difference that we had there. But one thing we did learn is in the remote world is that that people work for companies that they have friends with, that they can build a relationship with. And so it's super important and super intentional that we're on camera all the time. We're always looking at eye contact to make sure that you understand and that you're comprehending, and you're really, the eye contact is the big part of building that relationship. And so the camera was on all the time when it came to all the meetings. Never even heard of Zoom fatigue. That was something that was made up after the pandemic. We'd never experienced it in the 10 years prior to that. So it was kind of an interesting concept. It's like, well, there's things that you do and you can't do to get around being on screen. But the big thing was that we realized that you had to have that in-person touch at some point. And what I mean by that is we have retreats every 6 months, because we found that, and again, there's nothing scientific about it, but we found that when it gets past 6 months, people start drifting away or losing connectivity to your team. And with those retreats, it brings them back in. And with the retreat, what I mean by that is we bring them off site somewhere. So if our heavy concentration of individuals would be in one state, we might look into a different state and have a retreat in that state, in which we could then bring everybody together and do some workshopping, some non-technical skills, learning how to work with other people, maybe how to handle difficult situations, bringing in different speakers to talk, the experts to talk about different things. And it's very soft skill oriented, with a kind of a twist for those folks that need the hard skill. Maybe if we've got something like a new software rolling out, we might roll it out at the retreat and show everybody at one time or something like that. But the big part about the retreats is that at the end of the day, we break out in small groups, have dinners, and then we all meet back for a cocktail hour, usually rent something out to have everybody there. And the team loves it. They're there. They're out till 1 o'clock in the morning a lot, because they're really looking for that connectivity, that having a beer or having, being able to talk for a while, or a coffee or whatever that might be, with their teammates, because they see them a lot through video, and this gets them a chance to unite. And the team loves it. We have about, I'd say, 95% attendance at all the retreats, and it's a big part of what we do, and why our retention rate is so high with our teammates. We don't get as much turnover because of that connectivity. The fact that we're people first, meaning we give them the opportunity to work anywhere they want and any time zone they want, just as long as they're meeting client obligations, and in return, their responsibility is getting things done timely and getting things done with quality. And so that's a kind of a trade-off, and teammates love it. And that's anytime we do our reviews, that always comes up as they appreciate that we're so people first in those areas.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. Never think about that. Yeah, I mean, like overall, and how you describe it is very. It seems like everyone really engaging and looking forward to work together. That is something
Mhm.
that I'm keen to see in the company, that like have
Mhm.
empathy toward each other, that wakes up every day to work, exciting to work.
Mhm. Mhm. And that happens too. I mean, we use different softwares. You've got to have the right people first of all in order to do it. Some people just aren't made to work from home. And that's fine. But then you have to have the processes in place. You have to have the right tools. Like we use a tool from day one. Tools are kind of funny because accountants really don't like change. They're if change is change is a really bad word for accountants. And so when we introduced a new software, everybody's like, "Oh, it's new software. I don't want to change." But when we offered this one software, which was a communication platform, basically an office tool, it was called Sococo, and it reminds you of kind of SimCity, and it kind of shows everybody on the screen if they're working today and that sort of thing. And it gave everybody a visual of people in an office, and so it was kind of neat because people could actually knock on somebody's door, virtually knock on somebody's door. They could pop into a video chat. It could be a video chat regarding work, or it can just simply be, hanging out, asking how they did last night at playing golf or whatever that might be. But it gave them the ability to simulate the fact that they're working in an office environment, and it made it really nice. And that was one of the, that's just an example of different tools that are out there to really kind of help the situation. So as a business owner, especially in today's, you want to look for tools that can bring people together. Whether that's video conferencing through a Slack or Teams or Google or whatever that might be, and don't be married to it. Don't think, hey, just because I'm in Google Meets right now that I'm going to use Google Meets forever, because there might be something better out there, a better experience for your team or your clients that I want to hop into and figure out, because technology changes so often. And so it's important to really stay up on technology, and don't be afraid to make change, especially in a remote environment, because technology, you have to be a technology first company really to really embrace the work from home.
You mentioned that after 10 years ago, and then like following 1 year after you decided to go total virtually, you
Mhm.
invested for video conference. That would
Yep.
be a huge investment though, back in the
Well,
day.
the software back then was super cheap. So it really wasn't a huge investment. So the investment was, we had to have, you had to have laptops, so instead of the desktops, I don't know how many people have desktops anymore or not, but you had to have a laptop, you had to have a
Webcam.
video camera, so that you had that. A lot of times it was built into the laptop, which was nice.
Oh,
Other times it was not. And then you had to have a microphone to speak into. That was really, really it, because you had the camera and everything, and that's really all that they needed. And so what we did is, those are things that we would have bought for them anyways, and a lot of our folks already had them because they're already working with clients virtually, and so it wasn't a huge investment in technology at that point because of that. And so it made it really a nice transition. So when they took it home, we said, you know what, we don't want to be your administrative person anymore. We're going to give you a stipend. And we gave our team a monthly allowance that they could build on at that point, it was called a PEX card. Now we use Divvy cards for it. But it builds credit so that that when my microphone goes out, or for a better microphone, I don't have to call in and ask if I can buy something. I just use my PEX card because I've got money allocated towards that. And we give like $2,000 or $2,500 a year. I don't remember the exact number anymore, but we give a specific dollar amount every year that we know that our team's going to use. And so if they have a microphone change, they can do that. If their chair, a lot of times in an office space, everybody's fighting for the chair. If they want to get a chair, that's fine. Use their PEX card, get a chair. It just because again, it just takes away that allowance. But our team is ultimately responsible for replacing their computer, so they got to make sure that they're not using their entire allowance, and they actually budget for it, so that when the time comes to upgrade their computer, they've got funds in the PEX card in order to do that. And so we give our team the autonomy to use their own funds, or to use basically our funds set aside to be able to purchase and buy the technology. The software itself that I mentioned before, very inexpensive. It was like $30 a person per month, so it wasn't a big cost, which was nice. But that's just part of the technology part of it, because when you think about it, you spend about 4% of your annualized revenue on office space anyways. So instead of spending on office space now we're spending it on other things. We're repurposing that money for the retreats, and repurposing that money to have technology allowances and so forth.
Oh yeah, I just recall that we can use like Skype or something back in the day.
Yeah, Skype. That was yep. That's exactly
Right. Yeah, and you
Mhm.
can just like use like as a company numbers or something. Yeah, I was like,
Yep.
oh
Mhm.
yeah, I was imagine that like having like a projector with like how we
Oh,
do podcasts. So not that fancy.
nope. Doesn't have to be that fancy. Yeah, it can just simply be a computer. Yeah, good video. And keep in mind that everybody was in the same boat back then, so video wasn't perfect by any means, and neither was everything else. And so people accepted that. So it wasn't like today. If you come with really bad video, people look at that in a negative way. Back then, it was just simply it was more of a positive. Hey, you're being innovative. You're doing something different. This is kind of a neat technology, and that's kind of how they looked at it back then.
And what about papers? Like from the because
Oh,
what
yeah.
I understand, at least in Thailand here, we
Mhm.
have to keep all the papers at least 7
Mhm.
years after that tax years round.
Yep.
So yeah, what about on your side? But I'm
Yeah.
paperless right now.
So
Totally
we
on
got
and
rid of
off.
paper a long time ago. Actually, it's kind of funny because we'll scan everything in, and everything will be kept virtually, for as many years as required by law, whether it's 6 years or 7 years. But the actual physical paper itself isn't necessary. At least it's not in the United States. And so we'll scan everything in, especially like when it comes to tax season, where we'll get a bunch of information from the client. We'll scan it in and give it back to the client if the client wants it. Otherwise, we'll destroy it, and we'll have a virtual copy of it, forever. And that virtual copy is what we use to actually prepare the returns. And so, with our team doesn't even have a printer at home. They could if they wanted to, but there's no really need for it. So they don't have a printer. We have everything mailed into one location, in which the location scans everything in there and takes care of everything. So we're 100% paperless, and have been that way for number of years, to the point we don't send anything out in the mail. Everything is done through email or through safety encrypted boxes, and that sort of thing. So it's super safe, and with no paper, which is nice. So I don't have any piles of paper behind me at all.
That's great. No
Yeah.
dress.
Yep. Mhm.
How long it takes for you to build this system, like the whole operation that it seems seamless?
Yeah, it's fairly quick, fairly easily. You just have to have the right software in place, and you have to have processes. You have to be diligent with your processes. So if you're a one-person shop and you're doing taxes or whatever that might be, well, then you've got to have you got to think, hey, how can I, if people are sending me stuff, how can I get this stuff in electronic form? And then how can I do it fairly quickly and cheap? Do I need to have it sent somewhere else where they can do it at a very inexpensive place? Can I do it in-house? Can I have a contractor doing it? So you've got to look for different ways of, hey, how can I bring that information in? And then once I've done that, do I have the right software that will allow me to do it effectively? Because if you're using the wrong software, it's going to be a really bad experience for both you and your team, and even your clients. And so you want to make sure that the software that you're looking at will allow you to work virtually. And so then, of course, you have to have the right people. Some people want to use paper and that's all they want to use, and then they're going to continue doing it. That's probably not the person you want on your team then. So you want somebody that's open to change and open to be able to using different things. So you have to have the tools, processes, and people all three working together in order for that to work. And it can be done fairly quickly. It can be done within one year fairly easily.
Lastly, how do you find the right people to work with you virtually then?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it wasn't until we were national that we could actually do that. When we were in a small city of 300,000 people, and with the idea that, hey, we're going to go from an 18-person company to a 100-person company, that's hard to do in a small city. And so we had to actually find a national presence. And what I mean by that is we had to make sure that if you look for virtual CFO or look for a specific category, we popped up pretty quickly in the rankings, so that when people were looking for that as a customer, they could find it, but also people looking for that as a profession, they could also find it. And so we found a lot of our folks that way. And then there's other organizations out there that will hire, that will basically recruit on a for those folks that are working remote. So fully remote companies, there's virtual location. There's a lot of different companies out there that are designed to help you find good talent that wants to work fully remote. And then it's just simply putting together processes and interviewing those folks through the internet, not in person. All the different things that you would do in person, now you're doing virtually. And it's just important to have processes in place, repeatable, know what you want, know what you're looking for that role, whether it's somebody, whether you're hiring, because when you're hiring somebody for a virtual CFO role versus somebody that's going to be a bookkeeper or accountant, it's a completely different person, completely different personality. And so you're looking for that individual. What I found that worked for me best is that when I meet people, I think everybody can be successful. I look into everybody and think, wow, this would be a great person. In reality, they're probably not. So it's important to have a third party that's very objective to help you do the recruiting. And we were able to have that. We actually had a few people on the team that were those individuals. And so just creating that national presence. If you can't create it that quickly, reach out to different organizations that recruit nationally, that recruit for virtual help. And between the two of those, you should be able to build a team fairly quickly.
So in case anyone want to follow you or reach out to you, where can they find you then, Jody?
Yeah, it's a great question. So if you were to actually Google me, I'm going to pop up all over the place. But if you want to reach out to me individually or YouTube me, we do a lot of videos and everything. My name again is Jody, Jody. Last name is Grunden, Grunden. But you can reach me at jody@summitcpa.net, and that's not .com, it's .net. I couldn't afford the .com way back then, so I stuck with .net. And feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to return an email, maybe hop on a quick conversation if it was business related, and maybe help somebody get to that next step in their career, or just give them advice or whatever they might be looking for.
Thank you so much for sharing this awesome experience with our Get Unstuck today.
Yeah, thank you.
I hope this episode inspires you wherever you are in your entrepreneurial journey, so that you can have your business that supports your lifestyle. Get a show note at getunstuckmethod.com/podcast. Review what you have learned together today and start implementing right now. See it by yourself. The result of your consistent action are worth it. You deserve the freedom to enjoy your life. Until the next episode, let's get unstuck.